Hi everybody, today we're going to be talking about solving systems of equations by elimination. So up to this point, you may have learned other methods for solving systems like graphs and tables and possibly substitution. But today we are going to learn an algebraic method called solving using elimination. This method is my favorite method because it just kind of lines everything up and it's just fun for me to do, I feel like. So the first thing you're going to do in solving for elimination is you're going to line up both terms, like terms for both equations. So if you notice in this equation, we've got 6y over regular y. We've got 2x over minus 2x. And then we've also got our constant term on the equal side, 8 and 6. So what we're going to do is we are going to look for what are called inverse coefficients, okay? Inverse coefficients mean they're like 3x and then like negative 3x. So they're going to cancel each other out, okay? So that way we can eliminate one variable. If you cannot find any that eliminate automatically once you've lined up your like terms, you're going to make some by multiplying, but we'll talk about that in a little bit, okay? So let's just take a look at this exact problem real quick. So the problem is 6y plus 2x equals 8, and then we've got y minus 2x equals 6. So in this problem, I notice my y's are lined up, my x's are lined up, and I notice that I have 2 and negative 2. So those are going to do what we call cancel. So I'm going to use a blue highlighter to show this, but basically you're just going to draw a line underneath to show that we're going to add the equations together, and a line through the equal sign just so we don't mix up our sides of the equations. And we're going to notice that those cancel out, so we're going to cross them off. Okay? And then we're just going to add 6y plus, remember there's a 1 hiding there, so 1y is 7y. And on this side I'm going to do 8 plus 6, and that's 14. So why was that helpful? Well, that eliminated one of the letters from my equations. And so now I have 7y equals 14. All I have to do is divide by 7 on both sides and get y equals 2. So remember, with systems, I need to have an x and a y. So in step 4, you're going to take this y equals 2, and you're going to use that in one of these two equations to figure out x, okay? So you can pick your favorite equation. I'm going to start by picking 6y plus 2x equals 8. So if I picked 6y plus 2x equals 8, I'm changing out the y with a 2. I got y is 2, so I'm going to change out the y with a 2, okay? I'm going to draw a little arrow to it. So I'm going to say 6 times 2, and then plus 2x equals 8. And now I can figure out what x is because y is 2. So that's 12 plus 2x equals 8, minus 12, minus 12. That cancels. We're left with 2x equals 8 minus 12 is negative 4. And then just divide by 2, and we get x equals negative 2. So now we have our x value, and we have our y value. So here's x, and here's y. So I can write it as an ordered pair. X first, y second. So I get negative 2, comma 2 as my answer. Okay? Now, I picked the top equation to substitute y equals 2 into, but I could have also picked the bottom equation. Watch. Y minus 2x equals 6. So instead of writing y, I'm going to put in a 2. So we get 2 minus 2x equals 6. And then obviously we would subtract 2 on both sides. Negative 2x equals 4. Divide by negative 2, we get x equals negative 2. So you could pick either of these two equations and you still end up with your x is equal to negative 2. Okay? So it's pretty simple. That's why I like elimination. You just make sure you line up your variables, cross off what cancels out, and then just divide to get your other letter. All right? So we're going to go through a few more examples, but we're going to go a little more quickly, okay? In example 1, I start by checking to make sure that my x's and my y's are lined up. So all I have to do now is draw my little, I'm adding them together, separating my sides. What cancels on this problem? I notice that 2y and negative 2y cancel, so I can cross those out. And I'm doing 5x plus 1x, that gets me 6x. And on this side I get 18. Now all I have to do is solve for x. Divide by 6 on both sides. X equals 3. Now that I know that x is equal to 3, I'm going to pick one of these two equations. Looking at these two equations, which one seems simpler to put in x for? In here or in here? I like the bottom equation better. So my bottom equation is x minus 2y equals 17. So instead of writing x, I'm going to put 3. So 3 minus 2y equals 17. Subtract 3 from both sides. Negative 2y equals 14. And then just divide by negative 2. So y equals negative 7. You absolutely could have picked the top equation and you would have ended up with the same answer. So now that I have x and y, I'm just going to write it as an ordered pair. 3, comma, negative 7. Okay. Pretty simple. Instead of having to solve for a y and graph it, makes it pretty simple here. All right. Let's look at, number 2. Number 2. So we're going to take a look at it. We're going to go ahead and draw our little dealy-ma-bobber to separate it out, get it all set up. Is there a letter that is going to cancel out this time? So I look, my x's are lined up, my y's are lined up. So yeah, it looks like y will cancel out. And so I get 4 plus 3 is 7x, and 4 plus 10 is 14. Now all we do is divide by 7. So we get x equals 2. Next up, we pick our favorite equation. I like to stay with positive if possible, so I'm going to pick the one with positive y. Okay, so we get 3x plus y equals 10. And so I'm going to go ahead and put in 2 for my x value. 3 times 2 is 6. And now subtract 6 from both sides. So y equals 4. Now I have x and I have y. Last step, write my ordered pair, 2, 4. Okay. We don't always find x first. Sometimes we find y first. But it all just depends on how the problem is set up. Okay? All right, let's take a look at number 3. When I look at number 3, I notice that nothing is canceling out. So then I'm going to take a little bit of a closer look at number 3, and I notice that it says 8x and 4y, and then here it says 4y and 3x. If I rewrote these so that they go x first and y second, I'd keep this one the same. But if I put the 3x first, I'm going to have to make sure I write negative 3x. And then positive 4y, and then positive 14. Now do you notice something cancels out? Yep, my y's cancel out again. Man, every time. So 8 minus 3x is 5x, and then 14 minus 4 is 10. Now I just divide by 5 on both sides. X equals 10 divided by 5, which is 2. Now I pick my favorite equation, and I want to make sure that I stay positive if possible. So I think I'm going to go with this bottom equation, mostly because my y right here is positive. So I go negative 3x plus 4y equals to 14. And instead of writing x, because that's the letter I got, I'm going to put 2. And now we just solve. Negative 3 times 2 is negative 6, plus 4y equals 14. Add 6 to both sides. 4y equals 20. Divide by 4. Y equals 5. Now I have x and y. Just write my ordered pair. 2, 5. Okay. All right, next up we got number 4. Same problem on number 4. I noticed straight away that the x and the y are not lined up. So let me go ahead and line them up. So it's x plus 3y equals negative 7. And this one changes to negative x plus 2y equals negative 8. So now they're all lined up. Which letter cancels out this time? Yeah, x cancels out this time. So we get 3y plus 2y is 5y, and negative 7 plus negative 8 is negative 15. So what do we get for y? That's easy, we just divide. So y equals negative 3. Now I got y this time. I'm going to plug it into one of my equations. I'm going to go ahead and pick the top one because everything's positive. X plus 3y equals negative 7. But instead of writing y, that's where I'm going to put my negative 3. So it's x plus 3 parentheses negative 3 equals negative 7. And then we multiply x, and negative 3 times 3 is 9, so minus 9 equals negative 7. Then we add, so x equals negative 7 plus 9, which is positive 2. So we got x and y. I did not mean to write x, I meant to write parentheses. X is 2, and then y is negative 3. Okay. So that's all fine and dandy. Everything cancels out. Step 1, we're going to make sure that everything is lined up. Step 2, we're going to make sure that we cancel out one of our letters. And then once that happens, it's super simple. We just divide, okay? So we would get 5y. All we're going to do is divide. That's always our step after elimination. So that's why I like elimination, because it's easy to just cancel something out. All right. So what happens when we have something like this? So we look at this, more elimination strategies, and we notice that the 4x's are the same and the y's are the same. But when I go to try to do this, I end up getting 8x plus 8y equals, was that 40? That doesn't help me because nothing canceled out. I don't have any letters gone. So why doesn't adding them together work? Because everything is positive. And nothing cancels. So we can do something called multiply the entire equation by a specific number. So we are going to try multiplying the entire second equation by negative 1. So here is my second equation. I'm going to put a negative 1 outside parentheses, and I'm going to write my equation. 4x plus 3y equals 18. Okay? So now I have my whole second equation, and I'm multiplying it in parentheses by negative 1. So that means I just distribute negative 1 to all 3 parts of that equation. So I get negative 4x, negative 3y, and also negative 18. Since they were all positive, they all turned negative. So if I do that, I've kept my equation equal because that means I multiplied by 1 on both sides of the equation, okay? So if I do that and I keep the top equation, which was 4x plus 5y equals 22, and then I'm just going to copy this one that I just multiplied by a negative. So now how does that help me solve this equation? This system of equations? Now my x's will cancel out. So I can cancel out the 4x's. And so 5y minus 3y is 2y. And 22 minus 18 is 4. So just like before, now I only have one letter. And now I can just divide and figure out y. and then come back and figure out x. Now, when I go back to figure out my other letter, I'm going to use the equation that I didn't touch, okay? I might have messed up this equation, so I want to make sure I write down this equation correctly. So it's 4x plus 5y equals 22. So I'm going to take this y and I'm going to put it in instead of, this 2, and I'm going to put it in instead of y. So we get 4x plus 5 times 2 equals 22. And now we just solved that equation. And I'm going to have to write a lot smaller now. So 4x plus 10 equals 22. Take out that 10 on both sides. 4x equals 12. Divide by 4. Oh my gosh, I have to write so tiny. Divide by 4, and I get x equals 3. So my solution is x is 3, so 3 first, 2 second. Okay? So let's try that a few times on this second page here. Let's look at number 7. So on number 7, we notice that we have 4x and negative 2x, and we have 3y and positive 3y. Nothing cancels, but if I multiply the second equation by negative 1 all the way through, it turns into 2x minus 3y and negative 10. And then we'll copy the top equation, just how we saw it, 4x plus 3y equals negative 2. And now our 3y's cancel. So we get 4 plus 2 is 6x equals negative 12. And now you just divide to figure out x. X is negative 2. Then, remember, we pick our favorite equation. I like the top one, but honestly, it doesn't matter which one we pick. And we're going to plug that x into that equation. 4 times negative 2 plus 3y equals negative 2. And then that's negative 8 plus 3y equals negative 2. And now I got to solve quickly, and I ran out of space. I guess I can move over this away. So that's canceled, so we get 3y equals 6. Divide by that 3. We get y equals 2. Okay? So now we just take it and write negative 2 comma 2, and that's our answer. X was negative 2, y was 2. Okay. We can do the same thing on this problem, and we can be strategic about which one we multiply by negative 1. It does not matter which one you choose to multiply by, but I always like to pick the one that's going to make the most sense in my mind, okay? It really doesn't matter as long as you follow your mathematical rules. So for this problem, I'll multiply the bottom one by negative 1. So when we do that, we get negative 2x, negative y, and positive 19. And we copy the top equation down. 3x plus y equals negative 26. Now we have something that cancels, so we can go ahead and cancel that out. And then 3 minus 2 is 1, so 1x. And negative 26 plus 19 is negative 7. Now, I'm actually done with this problem because it says 1x. So I don't have to do anything else. Now I just pick one of these equations. Sure, the top one. Bottom one's fine too, but I'm going for the top one this time. 3x plus y equals negative 26. We're putting in that negative 7 instead of our x. So that's negative 21 plus y equals negative 26. And so remember, to solve this, you'll add 21 to both sides. Did not leave enough room to write here. So we get y equals, and then negative 26 plus 21 is negative 5. So we just write our ordered pair. X is negative 7, y is negative 5. Now we're done. Okay. I can multiply an equation by literally whatever I want. Okay, so if I wanted to multiply this equation by -2, I could do that. But if I did by -2, that would get me -4x, -2y, and then twice 19, which I think is 38. But that's not going to help me solve this problem, okay? So if I'm looking at, for instance, come back up here to number 5. If I'm looking at this equations right here, and I'll just make them a little bit bigger. I notice that my x's are not going to cancel out, and my y's are also not going to cancel out. And if I try to multiply by -1, well, that really just changes the signs of my x, my y, and my 3. But if I wanted it to cancel the y, all I would need to do is make this y value be -4, right? I want this piece right here to be -4 so that 4 minus 4 would go away, right? Well, if I wanted to do that, I would just multiply this whole second equation by -4. So that way, my y values would disappear, okay? So when I do that, I would get -8x, -4y, oof, and then -12. And then I would have 3x and +4y and 17. And I could solve this because my 4's would eliminate, okay? Does that make sense? This question says, if the two problems below, what number would you multiply the second equation by? So the answer to this question, they're not asking you to solve this. They're just asking you, what number would you put outside the parentheses on the second equation? So for number 5, we would put a -4 so that they would cancel. On number 6, I notice I have x and 5x, and then I have 7y and 2y, and this 7y is negative. So I've got the plus minus going on here, but could I multiply 7 by anything to make 2? Well, it would have to be a fraction, right? That'd be a little weird. There's an easier way to go about this. I could just get rid of the x term. I could multiply this x by -5. And if I did that, then I would have -5x and +5x, and so those would cancel, and I would just get my answer after that. So the number I would multiply by is actually -5. Does that make sense? So using that idea is how we're going to solve number 9. Because on number 9, I've got 2x and 4x, and I've got 9y and 3y, but nothing cancels. So I could multiply one of these equations by a number so that something would cancel, okay? So I could do the bottom equation. If I wanted my y's to cancel, I could multiply this 3 by some number so that it would cancel with the 9. What number do you think that would be? I think it would be -3. So if we do that, we get -12x, and we get -9y, and then we get +18. And then on top we have 2x, +9y, and 12. And so we could solve from here, right? Just line it up, cancel out our y's. So we get 2 minus 12 is -10x, and then 12 plus 18 is 30. So then we would just divide by -10. And that gets us x equals -3. Then we just go back and pick an equation that we like. I like 2x plus 9y, so we'll use that one. Instead of writing x this time, we're going to write -3. And then just multiply and subtract. So -6 plus 9y equals 12. Add 6 to both sides. 9y is 18. Divide by 9. Y equals 2. So x is -3 and y is 2. And that's that. All right, so solve by elimination. We're going to make sure that our variables are lined up. We're going to try to cancel out one of the letters. If one of the letters does not cancel out, we're going to try to multiply through by a -1 or a -3 or maybe a 5, like whatever it takes so that my letters will cancel out. Once my letters cancel, I'm going to end up with just something that I need to divide to figure out one letter. Then I take that letter, plug it back into one of the two equations, and solve for the other letter. When I'm finished, I write my ordered pair. Okay? All right. Now you're going to glue these into your spiral into the next empty page. So I'll show you how to do that. Okay. So you'll go ahead and glue in 21-4 just like this. Just glue it in. This is one from last year. So just glue it in just like this. And then you're going to turn to the page beside it, and you're going to take these two papers. You'll glue the one with all the work down all the way on the page, and then you'll glue this one on top. You'll just put a little strip above it up here and just set it on top, and that way you just have like a little lift the flap kind of thing so that you can follow along, okay? So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.